Donald Sykes, well, everybody just called him Don, was this debonair, charismatic man who made you want to be a part of his team. Recognized nationally as a champion for the poor and disenfranchised, Don pursued equal rights with a unique passion that inspired countless local, state, and national politicians to sit up and take notice, not to mention the public at large. By the age of 30, Don had already built a successful career and was being actively recruited for executive positions. He excelled at developing talent by mentoring future leaders, hiring low-income residents, and teaching UWM students. He created an environment where everyone felt valued.
My first connection with the Community Relations Social Development Commission and Don Sykes was at a point in time when I had dropped out of college. I had a small child, and I sought employment and attained employment at SDC. But the fact that he allowed me to soak up his knowledge, sit at his feet, is something that I carry with me today.
How does somebody explain how they find a friend? Certainly we shared a lot of things. Like both of us were by heart, I think, planners and developers versus implementers. Both of us had a real good sense that poor people, and especially black people, were getting screwed over. Both of us were pretty good at partying. We learned to trust each other. And I don't know how you learn to trust somebody, but he just became one of my intimates. He was somebody who I cared about. If he wanted something done, I'd do it for him. If I wanted something done, he'd do it for me.
Fishing trips with staff, facilitating cooperation among the opposing resident groups, and supporting diverse ethnic festivals were just a few of the many creative tools that Don used to unite and conquer. One might assume, though, considering the lengthy list of his accomplishments, that Don faced few challenges, that opportunities came easy, and that he lived a perfect life. But those assumptions would be wrong. Don overcame adversity by constantly pressing forward to achieve his goals. Born in Chicago in 1936, Don was the second of 8 children. He was 3 years old when his father died. The family lived in public housing, and Don was even briefly involved in a gang in middle school. He was influenced by both his family, who set high expectations for him, and by a teacher, a former FBI agent, who recognized his potential. Don fulfilled those expectations by earning both bachelor and master degrees. Before moving to Milwaukee, Don married Geraldine GERRI Curtsey in 1960.
We actually met in college. I was in college in the city, and he was in school outside of Milwaukee. And so he was in town and came by the school where I was with some mutual friends, and I saw him, and I said, okay, I kind of like him. And that's how we met. We just started dating and dated for a couple of years before we decided to get married.
They had 2 sons, David and Dennis, and later welcomed Trevor Knight to the family. In Milwaukee, Don and GERRI also created an extended family, an inclusive social community of friends and colleagues. And it was here, in Milwaukee, that Don would begin his greatest life's work. And he also faced some of his most difficult challenges.
There's always struggles when you're heading up an agency or organization the size of the Social Development Commission. And I never saw him when he was down. Even though Social Development Commission was struggling, going through some changes, Don was always upbeat. He always had a positive outlook. He always thought that and made things happen in spite of what the odds might be.
In the midst of the civil rights movement during the turbulent 60s, Don became executive director of Milwaukee's Social Development Commission, SDC. Despite Police Chief Breyer's opposition to SDC's hearing on police brutality and Mayor Meyer's fading support, Don shaped SDC to be a catalyst for change, rallying against urban renewal, police brutality, and racial prejudice. In this work, he faced negative public perception and media scrutiny.
The Sentinel, Milwaukee Sentinel, had decided that Don was a crook and that they should pillory him in the newspaper. Well, I think they focused on him because he was young, bright, black, and we had now a budget that was equal to or a little greater than the United Way. Don understood that, but he never really quit trying to get done what he wanted to get done. It wasn't like, okay, let's stop, we're going to get really involved in all this stuff. Everybody was supposed to do what they were doing.
Despite resistance from the congressional, state, and local officials, to President Johnson's direct funding of grassroots organizations, Don persevered in leading the efforts to unify and leverage the power of these organizations in Milwaukee and statewide. In 1968, he was part of the triumvirate along with Rosalie Tryon and Jake Banks that created WISCAT, the State Community Action Association. Don serves as the organization's president during times when the politicians work to diminish the voice and power of the poor and the organizations that serve them. After 2 decades of service in Milwaukee, Don stepped into the national stage for then-President Bill Clinton as director of the Federal Department of Health and Human Services, Office of Community Services.
When Donald was asked to come to Washington to work as the director of the Office of Community Services in the Department of Health and Human Services, that was his dream job. That was the job that related to all the community action agencies around the country. So not only had he been in the trenches doing it, now he was the person who funded those programs. And Don loved every minute of it.
In that role, as was evidenced by his time in Milwaukee, Don was not your typical administrator. He was a hero for the leaders of the 1,000 community action agencies fighting the war on poverty across the country. Following the very personal recruitment from Milwaukee, Mayor Tom Barrett, Don and GERRI returned to their adoptive home of Milwaukee in 2007. Mayor Barrett recruited Don to lead the Milwaukee Area Workforce Investment Board, MIWEB, known today as Employ Milwaukee. Don re-energized MIWEB by increasing funding, strengthening regional collaborations, addressing the needs of the unemployed and employers.
You know, when I reconnected with Don, he was at MIWEB, and of course I was over at the Urban League, and it was almost like we had not missed a beat. And I know when I approached him as I was head of the Urban League, he sat down with me and we figured out ways that the Urban League could work with MIWEB so that we would have a beneficial, relationship, a win-win relationship. And that was something that I really, really admired and respected about Don.
So how do we begin to describe the void left by a life well lived? What will we miss most about this man who seemed larger than life?
His commitment to Milwaukee, his commitment to our community, his commitment to our people, his commitment to all people is what made him outstanding, most outstanding to me.
Don was a person who was a affable, handsome, articulate defender of poor people. Not someone who was apologizing for people being poor, but someone who made it mainstream to advocate for a person like me, and to say, with a little training, with a little help, we can lift this person up. His legacy is in lifting people up.
One of the things that I think should never be forgotten about Don is, although he came from Chicago, Milwaukee was his adopted home. Anything that he could do to help Milwaukee, he would do.
Don exemplified excellence and professionalism. He showed many of us how to be an African-American professional.
I guess what I miss most about Don not being there is having somebody to talk to in the evenings. And he was a great travel companion. I miss cooking for somebody. I still cook for me, but I miss cooking for somebody. And those are the things you miss after 57 years.
Despite adversity, despite the critics and doubters, Don Sykes made us want to be in the arena, fighting for equality with him. Don said, all you can do is the best you can do. And you do it. It's irrelevant to fret. Don't waste your time fretting and crying. Put your energies into what you can do. Move at it. In his honor, we must keep moving at it, pushing against the mountain of inequality, doing the very best we can until the mountain crumbles. This courageous, determined, passionate fight for social justice on behalf of the poor and disenfranchised is the lasting legacy of Don Sykes. My name is Earl Ingram, Jr. Thank you for watching.